Herkese merhaba.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is today's first session on transportation. So we're here today in the framework of Maruf, Marmara Forum, Urban Forum. So this forum has been organized in collaboration with UITP and Marmara Municipality Union. My name is Kaan. We must have met before. I am responsible for membership, marketing, in the UITP. So I'm working in Brussels. I will try to moderate the session. So we have very valuable speakers in this session. We have Turkish and international speakers amongst us. So the speakers represent different cities from Turkey. We have Mayor from Bursa. I would like to welcome him. So he has this vision and commitment. So it is very important for us to have the mayor amongst us. And the second panelist is our host, Deputy Secretary General from the Metropolitan Municipality of Istanbul, is with us. Is responsible for transportation in Istanbul. So he will share his vision and difficulties that they're encountering. And the third speaker is Feyzullah Gündoğdu. He is the General Director of Kayseri Transportation Company. So he's also working in the field of informal transports at UITP. He is the head of the group on informal transport. Welcome. The fourth speaker is from Senegal, from Dakar. There's this authority called CETUD. So she's the director of the technical activities. And then Gueye is the name of the next speaker. And so why have we invited CETUD? Because they have a great experience on institutionalization of the individuals and their individual attempts. So we have two international speakers. I will try to conduct the session in Turkish, but these two international guests will be listening to us thanks to translation. Welcome. Jaspal Singh is the last speaker. He's working in the same organization with me at UITP. He is a senior expert. So he's also expert in informal transport. He was the India director of UITP. So India is a country that has faced lots of difficulties. The speaker is in Toronto right now, but he's going to refer to the Indian experience in today's session. So this is the format of the panel. Actually, it is a bit different. So rather than making a presentation one by one, we would like to have a discussion environment so that we would be able to have a Q&A with you. In the beginning of the panel, we are going to listen to an introductory speech to be done by Jaspal Singh to have an introduction to the theme, and we will be listening to some worldwide examples. And then we have planned this session as the Q&A, And since we have Mayor of Bursa Metropolitan Municipality, we will also listen to the Bursa experience. He is going to make a presentation for us. So we're glad to have his presentation. And then some prepared questions will be asked to the panelists. Of course, we're expecting the panelists to answer these questions in 3 minutes. Of course, there are lots of things to be shared, but we're kindly asking the panelists to limit their answer for 3 minutes. And then we will have the question for the panelists. So this is going to pave the way for us to make the panel interactive. So why have we chosen this particular theme to organize such kind of a panel? Actually, some people might organize those panels for costs, autonomous cars, and investments, etc. But this particular topic is a very important topic for the countries like Turkey. So in Latin American countries, in Africa, in the developing countries, in the South Asian countries, and some countries of the Middle East, they are also experiencing similar challenges, especially after 1950s. There was a huge migration from the rural parts of the country towards the urban parts of the country, so there's this high demand for transport. How was this transport demand met? And the individual entrepreneurs have tried to use their small vans, and then the authorities, local administrations or central administrations have issued their licenses to them, and they have formed some lines, and this structure has brought some advantages and disadvantages for us. Actually, the purpose of this panel is to elaborate on the disadvantages and advantages, and to discuss what we can do for the future. So what kind of disadvantages do we face? Sometimes for some points we might have very bad network of transport, and the driving quality is lacking, and the safety and security and the quality might be low, and it might be very difficult to collect taxes. So these are some of the difficulties. So what is the size, what is the dimension of this particular problem? I will share some figures with you. So these are not up-to-date figures. These were a few years old. Rubber tire transport in Istanbul, including the shuttles, is and 93% of the rubber tire is insured by informal transport. Can you imagine? I mean, shuttles, the municipal buses, privately operated buses. So this ratio is 82% in Ankara and 81% in Izmir. So we're going to discuss about that. This is our main purpose. I'm not going to take much of your time. After making this short introduction, I would like to leave the microphone to Jaspal Singh. So I'm kindly asking him to summarize the subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaan. Thank you for a nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. Like Kaan mentioned, I work with him in UITP, and most of you don't know me. I think because I'm first time here in Turkey, first time I visit to Istanbul. So very happy to be here. As Kaan introduced, the topic is informal transport, or you can also call it as an individually owned transport here in Turkey. It's a big challenge, big issue around the globe, and UITP is working to bring that knowledge and share with the member. So to start with, I just want to give a brief background about UITP. It's a worldwide association. We are based in Brussels, but we have 1,600 members in more than 100 countries now. We started in 1985, and most of our members are either our operator, authority, or policy decision maker, the city authorities, research institute. So it's a global association trying to do advocacy for public transport around the world. Our mission is basically we want to promote the the development of public transport around the world. We want to bring like-minded people together so that they can discuss their challenges, they can find some of the solution from their peer. Yesterday we had a meeting here at this forum, so where we try to bring people from different parts of the world to discuss their issues and see what are the solutions implemented by some of these cities and how those solutions can be, either you can replicate or you can take some lesson from those solutions. Like Kaan mentioned, we have this steering group called UITP Informal Transport Steering Group. Mr. Feyzullah is chair of that group. We are very honored that he's chairing that group for us. So idea of this group is, we try to bring members from across the globe. Like Kaan mentioned, it's a big issue in MENA region, in Southeast Asia, in Turkey, in Africa, in Latin America. So we try to bring all these people together and try to see how these cities are tackling those challenges. We already had a couple of meetings, and the next meeting will be next year in Dubai for that group. These are some of the members who are part of this working group, and they share their knowledge, resources, and try to bring some solution for the members. Some of the publications, these are either available on UITP library, but you can also go to the website to download some of these publications about the informal transport. It try to cover some of these examples and lessons. Don't spend much of the time here, but the important question. So what are the key trends in developing countries? And Kaan already mentioned, some of them that what in developing countries we are facing is the rapid urbanization. So the people are moving from villages, from rural area to cities. And why that's happening? Because the cities are the economic growth engine. I was hearing yesterday, some of the cities are now contributing around 60% of the GDP of the country. So it's becoming that important that people have to move from the rural area to urban, but we don't have infrastructure available to tackle that kind of migration. The second thing we are experiencing is the economic growth in the city, because cities are growing, so it's attracting more people. People have more money to spend, and when they have money, the first thing they buy is their house. The second thing they buy is their car. So it's a second most investment done by an individual. So the moment the cities start growing further, faster, people start investing more in the vehicles. They need more mobility. People go out for lunch, dinner. So the demand for mobility start increasing in the city. And like I said, the rapid motorization. So moment cities are expanding, we have rapid motorization, and it results into to traffic jam. And it's a global phenomenon now. You go to any city in peak hours, and you have the same kind of challenges. All the cities are facing now, the traffic jam and the road blockage in the peak hours. And these are some of the key trends which are happening in the cities. I don't go very much into detail, but it's basically try to say that the urban population will increase and the number of urban trips worldwide increase. So it will increase from 7.5 billion in 2005 to 11.5 billion in 2025. So just imagine, are we expanding our road like this? Are we creating more infrastructure? No, we can't, because cities already are developed. So it's very difficult to expand our road. It's very difficult to create new highways and flyways. So it's not possible to cater those demands. So how we can tackle that demand? So answer is public transport. You cannot allow these additional 4 billion trips to happen by a private mode. So to cater to these 4 billion trips, you have to find some solution which can meet the supply, which can cater to the existing infrastructure. So that's a growing challenge for us. And we have noticed what happened. Most of the cities in the developing countries, when there is rapid increase in the population, when people start coming to the cities and all, so they have a demand for motorization, they have a demand for mobility. And what happened? Because city could not able to provide that, city could not able to serve that demand. Like what the Kaan just mentioned, some of the city, the informal transport is 80%. And why that is happening? Because the reason is that people need to move. So moment there is a demand coming out, so a lot of these individual operators, they see it as an opportunity, and they start providing their individually owned services to the people because they see as an employment opportunity, as an income opportunity, and they become an entrepreneur, and that's how the problem of informal transport start growing, in the city, and because there is a employment opportunity, so people try to bring their own vehicle, people try to get the permit and start operating. So it's like creating a ecosystem for informal transport. And I don't spend much time. You all know what informal transport we mean. It's individually owned transport. It's not illegal. It's legal transport, but it's owned by individual. They carry the trips on their own by their small vehicle. They sometimes follow route, sometimes they don't follow route. They have no fare fixed structure and all. So these are, some of the popular name. It's called in a different name, like it's called Dolmus in Turkey, but in Senegal it has Car Rapide. In Ghana it's called Trotro. In Nigeria it's called Denfo. In Philippines it's called Jipini. In India it's called Tempo, and in Indonesia it's called Bemo. So it's called in a different name around the world, and there are some interesting story, like how these names are coined in different countries. But the core is same. It's individually owned transport provided across the globe. But it's important part of our society. Can we say informal transport is bad? I don't think, because if it's providing 80% mobility in a city, how can it be bad? So it's quite relevant for the city because there is no public transport available. So it tried to bridge that gap of public transport. So we need some mode of a transport. Sometimes it acts as a feeder to your metro line, to your train line, or to your bus line. And it's also a livelihood for a lot of people in the city. So if 80% of people or trips are done by the informal transport, just imagine how many drivers, how many bus owners, how many mechanics, how many people who are dependent on that particular transport. So it's a source of a livelihood also for people. So it's quite relevant for the city. But the problem is when we have informal transport, we can't ensure the service quality, because every individual owner try to operate the service as per their own criteria. So it's very difficult to create a city, a good modern city with this informal transport. So important question is, what should we do? It's important for livelihood. It's important for providing a mobility service. At the same time, it's not good for a modern city. If tomorrow we want to call Istanbul as a smart city of the world, so you can't have informal transport around. So then you need to find a solution. So the important question for the policymaker is, what should we do? So first thing, a lot of policymakers decide, they say, okay, let's leave it like this. Whatever they are doing, let's leave it like this, and let's try to create a parallel system. Let's try to create our own metro line and the bus system, so we'll not interfere with what they are doing. But is this the right solution? No. Or we should eliminate them completely, or the city should decide that there should not be any informal transport or any bus running there. It's an ideal scenario, but is it possible? If they are providing 80% of the city demand, is it possible to remove them? I don't think. So what should we do? So this is the theme of this session. The answer lies is how to formalize that. So we cannot ignore the fact that informal transport or individually owned transport play a key role. So the only solution to way forward is that how we can formalize them, how we can put some structure to make it better. So I try to cover 2 case studies, and any one of you who has traveled to Dubai, you must have traveled in the taxi, and you must have liked it, because it's quite convenient, cheap, easily available, comfortable, you feel secure in the cab and all. But that was not the case earlier, So Dubai taxi was, again, individually owned. It was in a very bad shape till 1994, when the city start thinking, okay, now Dubai, we want to develop Dubai as a modern international city. So can we have a bad taxi system in a good city? So answer is no. So what city decided at that time in 1995, they created a company called Dubai Transport Corporation with the aim to modernize the whole taxi sector. And what they did, instead of creating any problem in the city, they politely asked these taxi owner that if you are ready to surrender your license, we will give you 1,000 dirham per month as a rental. So the city just acquired those license from the taxi operator and start paying them money. So, I mean, everybody was happy because you don't need vehicle, you don't need to take care of driver, you don't need to do any maintenance. So straight away in your bank account, you will get 1,000 dirham because you are owner of the permit. Now, good solution. A lot of people came forward, immediately in first few years, 50% of people start surrendering their license because they were getting free money. But the answer is how city will pay for that money. How will you pay 1,000 dirham every month to the permit owner? So city decided, we got the permit, and they floated a tender. They appointed 3 taxi companies, and they start charging these taxi company 1,500 dirham per month per plate. So they took the permit for 1,000 dirham, and they lease it out for 1,500 dirham. So in a way, they make 500 dirham as a profit for each plate. So now if you see, I mean, it's look very simple solution. It's look very easy solution. It was not that easy. But if you see now, everybody's in a profit. The permit owner, the guys who used to own those taxi are getting 1,000 dirham per month. The city is making 500 dirham per month from the plates. The taxi companies, because they got a monopoly now, because they are running the service, and it's very good. The people are liking it, so they are getting more business and they are profitable. The public, so the public is getting good service because earlier there was this individually owned service. Now they have a good branded company service. Tourists, it's very good for them because now they can easily available. So just imagine, a small step by a city can really change the whole ecosystem. If you see these diagram, it's not very clear, you can't read, but if you see, within 3-4 years, the whole system become profitable for everybody. So it's a kind of a mindset reform. One need to come forward and start investing. It's not difficult. The second example I want to share is about Johannesburg. So Johannesburg is very popular for these informal transport and individually owned transport. And I would say it's like a mafia which are owning those vehicles. So if you try to touch, I mean, they try to kill some of the politicians, they try to kidnap some of the regulator who try to do some reform. So you can imagine how difficult that situation was. So when Johannesburg launched their first BRT service, so they were like a lot of these informal vehicles were running in that corridor. So how will you run BRT service when there are parallel buses are running? So the city really need to come forward and think what's the solution. So city know that it will be very difficult to eliminate and remove those people. City took a different stand and they say, why can't we involve these people in the project? Why can't we make them as a stakeholder in this BRT corridor project? So what they did, they encouraged these permit holder to create a company, and they form a cooperative kind of a company, and whosoever own number of permits get the particular share in that company. So in a way, from a taxi operator or the bus operator, they become the owner of a company. And those company got a contract. It's a gross cost contract. They have no revenue risk. So the Johannesburg authority took all the revenue risk. And they ask all the operator to become part of this new ecosystem, operate the service. They created the service. They formed the company. They start operating the buses and all. The second question was the taxi drivers, those who were driving the taxi. So now they need driver for the buses. So what they did some reskilling for these drivers and make them as a bus driver. So they start getting a fixed salary for their work and all, fixed timing, and they can spend more time with their family and all. So they follow a different approach. Because they know they cannot buy the permit straight away because people will not be ready to give the permit. So instead of buying their permit, they ask them to become the stakeholder in this whole ecosystem. So I think this is the second approach which followed by the another city. And There are many such examples. There are many such examples around the globe. Like Kaan mentioned, I used to be in India. I am now shifted to Toronto, but I used to be in India. I worked on this informal transport project where we have, if you see on the left side, the kind of condition of buses where people are hanging from the door, the bus are in a pathetic condition. And we managed to reach to a level of service where, city got good swanky buses, people feel, the service is good. Same thing happened in Yagnan, Myanmar, like where they used to have these old buses and then implemented a new system and bring the new buses. So there are many examples around the globe. I just shared 3 or 4, but I think there are like 40, 50 examples where the cities are trying to do. Kayseri is one of the example in Turkey which has managed to convert from informal to formal. The idea is to how share these lessons and the example with the stakeholder. And I think with this panel, we'll try to discuss this issue and try to find some solution for the city. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Çok teşekkür ederiz Jaspal.
Thank you very much, Jaspal. It's been a very nice introduction because we could listen to the summary of the issue, of the related problems, and some good practices, some examples and their results. Now, we will be looking at Turkey. What should we do here in Turkey? We will have a chance to listen to different examples. This is a crucial area. This is a very important issue. And technical knowledge is not enough to solve this problem because political will, political vision is needed in this area. And today we are really lucky because Mr. Mayor is here together with us, and our mayor will be informing us about the perspective of political will in Bursa, in the Bursa province of Turkey. The floor is yours, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to welcome all participants, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, distinguished representatives of municipalities. I'm honored by being a member of Marmara Metropolitan Marmara Municipalities Union, and I hope this Marmara Urban Forum will be beneficial for the region, for the world. Transport is really important in cities where the population exceeds millions of people. This is the most important issue. It is true for Athens, for London, for New York, and for many other cities. It is also true for Istanbul, Bursa, and Ankara. The most important part is there are informal transport agencies, different systems of the municipality, together with the railway systems and airways, creating a system in this complex ecosystem, and controlling this system are needed. Sometimes the legislation is not enough because of already earned rights. We face some problems in Bursa, and we are exerting a tremendous effort to overcome those barriers. I would like to take you to a brief tour of Bursa. Bursa is the first capital city of the Ottoman Empire, as you all may know. And first, in tourism, in terms of cultural heritage, Bursa is very important. And Evliya Çelebi says that Bursa is a different spirit, and it is an exporter, $15 billion, with its industrial zones, free trade zones, Bursa is a substantial industrial city of Turkey. So I would like to talk about transport, but let me give you an example. Our sister city is Darmstadt from Germany. In Darmstadt, the population was 160,000 in 1973, but our population was around 300,000. Now our population is 3 million, 10 times bigger. In Darmstadt, it is 165,000, an increase of only 5,000 people in Darmstadt. So Bursa, each and every year, we receive migrants, there are newborns, so each and every year the population increases by 50 or 60,000 people. So about Bursa, there is a photograph. Some people say it's a historical city, some say it is a cultural city, some say it is an industrial city, some say it is a city of gastronomy. Well, there is so much richness, and there is an award, in different criteria. You can check this on the internet as well. According to Ndeye, in the last 3 years, Bursa has been included among 100 cities that are most desirable to live in. Well, sometimes we rank 50, sometimes 40, sometimes 60, but with different criteria, we should be in top 10 in our opinion. So, in terms of transport, this is the subject of our panel, that's why I would like to talk about this. Well, maybe you are the same age with me and you may remember there is a song, there are some villages that you have never been in, but you feel like a part of them. And today in Turkey we can have access to each and every place. We have 17 districts in Bursa, and in this sense, at each and every corner, at each and every point, we offer transport with a certain frequency. So, this is our responsibility, of course. So, the transport is something emotional as well, because mothers get together with their children, employees get together with their work, and students get together with their school thanks to the transport. So, this is the summary of transport, I guess. Getting together, like in every metropolitan municipality in Bursa. For building, the municipality is responsible. We have more than 450 buses. It is a route of 54 kilometers. Together with the railway, we offer transport to 1,020,000 people. And what is the formula? It is 3Z: effort, on time, and without price increase. 3Zs in Turkish. So this is crucial, because while you're exerting this effort, we have conducted as well public opinion surveys about the city. I was the district mayor previously. I wanted to learn about the opinion of the public. Everybody gives priority to the transport, while urban transformation has been there. We have built new buildings, there are city planners, transport experts, while the transport is an integrated process. The transport is influenced by different parameters. First, we need to understand them. The city has grown vertically, and as a result of this, in transport, we have faced different problems. So, within this context, about those 3Zs: effortless, easy to access, easy to transfer, easy to buy tickets, less waiting time at bus stops, and digital transformation in transport are taking place. About the disadvantaged group, we have different subsidies. Well, about transport, who is making money? No municipality, in my opinion. If you are not creating a loss, or if you can achieve a break even, then you are successful, because the most important thing is achieving the quality. So we have our own units, and we collaborate with private industry as well. We have different types of buses, and about the railway system, we are in a good shape, but of course there is room for improvement. And I said the digital transformation, electronic money collection system is going to be launched soon, so people will be able to buy their tickets online. Online refill with the mobile phone, and people will be able to buy everything online. So this will be launched soon. And on time, this concept is important. So planning is crucial. And we have more than 450 buses, and we go for renewals because the comfort matters, especially for busy lines. We give priority, and our capacity will be increased by 60% with signal optimization. So today we can carry only 3,000 passengers, but with an investment of 120 million, we will be able to carry 470,000 people. And there shouldn't be any price increase for tickets. Well, in Turkey, taking into consideration the elections, about prices, we have difficulties in terms of fuel or labor force. There are ongoing price increases, and also I'm a businessman and I have to calculate the cost part. But if you can ensure this public transport culture, then automatically the cost will go down. And first, you need to focus on students. Students are very important. So, since the beginning, we have not increased prices for students. So, there have been price increases like 50-60%, but for students, we have increased prices only by 11%. I won't take it too long. Let me summarize. We have a movie of Burulaş. Can we show the video, please? So, the more planned you are, the more you care about comfort, quality, and price, reasonable price, then you will become that successful. You need to bring together all actors together, then you will be better at transport. So, the profitability can be boosted together with all those efforts as well. There are other parameters, I said, they're true for Istanbul as well. The informal transport is the reality of Istanbul. Since I took the office, I got together with the authorities, relevant authorities, and there has been a transformation in Turkey. And let me say that we have to see both sides, because the profitability of enterprises is also important. So the dialogue is needed. We try to listen to all parties, and in my belief, in a couple of years, together with the transformation we have achieved, together with the railway system of 54 kilometers, well, we will increase it to 100 kilometers, and with only the railway, we will be able to serve to 1 million, together with buses to more than 2 million people will be possible. So public transport is indispensable for cities, and we wish you the best. I would like to thank to our moderator for giving us this opportunity, and I would like to extend my kind regards to each and every one of you.
Sayın Başkanımıza çok teşekkür
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It was quite an informative presentation. So what they've done in Bursa is quite successful. This is what we've witnessed at the end of the presentation. Is kindly offered the collaboration and cooperation with the minibus operators. Maybe over the course of the panel, we might stand a chance to ask some more questions to the mayor so that he would be able to further elaborate on what they've done, because this is very relevant. What they've done was quite relevant to what we have been discussing in the session. So let us ask these questions. We've been talking about the institutionalization of the informal transport operators. Maybe there should be a question mark. Should they really be institutionalized? Why do I raise this question? Because looking at the cities, many of the institutionalized bus operators are facing lots of losses, many of them. In Europe, they can cover their costs by 50% and 35% in the United States and in the continental Europe respectively, but they can stand on their feet somehow. So should we promote them to get institutionalized, or should we keep them individual? So maybe many of you know the answer of this question. Maybe I would like to ask this question to Mr. Feyzullah. So because he has such great experience and they have made a project, they have implemented a project. Let me ask what he thinks about this. Thank you very much. So it was quite a question right from the middle of the book, as they would say. Should we get institutionalized or not? Actually, I know the answer to this question, but I will keep my answer to the very end. So what happens if we do not get institutionalized? As we have listened to Jaspal's presentation, so what are the problems of institutionalization? So in terms of safety and security, we have some problems. In terms of safety and security of the driver and the passenger, we have some problems because we do not have a 100% control over the drivers, and they don't have a well-planned alignment and the itinerary. The initiative is totally in the hands of the drivers. When it comes to dolmuş, they can get off and get on wherever they want, and the itinerary might change. If there's no traveler in the car, they might finish their round earlier, and this is in the nature of the uninstitutionalized structure, as a matter of fact. So since there are that many factors which have an effect on the satisfaction of the travelers, maybe it wouldn't be proper to say that, okay, let's not get institutionalized. But as Kaan has put it, the cost is the thing that they need to consider. When it comes to the private operators, they can stand on their feet, but when you ask this question to them, because they're in the field, they say that I'm doing this job, but I have sold 2 flats of mine. Actually, there's this cost, and they're covering the cost from their own pocket. Maybe this is the amount of money that they cannot earn from this particular operation, but maybe the local administrations should give subsidies to them, but they're covering these costs from their own pocket. And when you ask the question, why do you do that? It's a kind of an hereditary profession for me. It's a kind of a meaning of their life. So they cannot imagine themselves in being engaged in another job. So it's like kind of killing them, like offering another job. So someone said that I left this job, I stopped being private operator. If I had left this job before the decease of my father would have an heart attack. So this is how they think. So they somehow stand on their own feet. By 50%, the local governments, the central governments are giving subsidies by 50%. When there are private operators in the Turkish example, it's the private operator who subsidizes the system. So can the administration say that, okay, they can stand on their feet? Okay, we may not offer subsidies to them. Maybe the same service quality can be provided, and maybe we might not care about the satisfaction level of the travelers. Maybe we don't have full control on the drivers. Maybe some drivers might have bad criminal record. I mean, can the administration say that? Do they have a chance to say that, okay, let's leave them as they are? No. The administration should step in. They should find a way, a method to finance, to subsidize. So they cannot say all these. If they want to solve these problems in such a way to increase the travelers' satisfaction and in such a way to give the quality service, it should be the administration who should assume these responsibilities. When it comes to the financial models, of course, this is the theme of a different session. So should we get institutionalized or not? There is only thing that we get stuck in, which is the cost. But if we want to overcome the cost, it can't be a wiser way to better than institutionalization. Thank you very much, Feyzullah. You have brought the subject to a very important point. So what is this point? The administration should promote the institutionalization of the private operators, but which administrations are we referring to? With which capacity and with which legal framework should they promote? So we are in need of a legal and institutional framework so that they would get institutionalized from the perspective of the institutional framework or infrastructure. Speaking of the metropolises, the metropolitan municipalities have the main responsibility when it comes to transportation, but they don't have the metropolitan municipalities don't have an integrated authority. Some transport options are controlled by the police enforcement, and some transport options are controlled by the municipalities, etc. So do we have a proper legal regulation which would allow us to make regulations on that, and whether shortcomings? Maybe this question should be asked to the city and the city administrator who encounters most of these problems. So can you imagine an integrated transport authority? What kind of plans do you have for future? Thank you very much. I would like to say welcome to each and every one of you. First of all, I would like to say welcome to the international guests. Please excuse me for speaking Turkish. I'm sorry, because the majority of the audience, so he says the same in English. The speaker is kindly apologizing to you for speaking Turkish because of the majority of the audience. When I received this invitation, I used to wear a different hat. I used to be an academic at the university who was giving transport courses. So over the course of time, my hat has changed. I have a different hat at the moment. I was appointed to this post 2 months ago, so I am now Deputy Secretary General who is responsible for transport. But I am trying to collect as many information as I can. But 2 months is quite a very short period of time. Also, the things that I will be telling you will be based on my past experiences. I used to have a different presentation, as a matter of fact, when I was wearing a different hat. But now I'm going to share the things with a different hat. I know what I'm going to tell you, but I don't know where to start. So I definitely agree with what's been said by Mr. Feyzullah. Of course, it's a must to get institutionalized. So all the difficulties that I have witnessed were all about the uninstitutionalized structure. So this safety, security, and trustworthiness might be affected. For example, if it's the time for them, they should depart. If it's snowy, they should be able to provide their services continuously. So institutionalization can pave the way for these, and the disadvantages can be lifted thanks to the institutionalization. But these systems, of course, we're referring to different facilities. For example, minibuses, buses, light rail, subways, light rail transport, etc. So they are segregated from each other by their capacities. So their capacities should be planned in such a way to have a congruency across them. Without institutionalization, even though the lines are in the same itinerary, they might be competing against each other. On the contrary, they should be supporting each other, and this is how they should be planned. If we're referring to Istanbul, the transport modes should be on the same backbone, and the minibuses and the buses and the rail system should be supporting each other on the same itinerary. And the biggest loopholes of the uninstitutionalized structure is this. Speaking of the administrative structure, as you have referred to, there are different structures when it comes to transport. Because we have Ministry of Transport. I mean, from the legal perspective, operation-wise, there are different structures, as all of you know. Speaking of the rail systems, Marmara is operated by TCDD, the rail authority, and the bus lines are operated by different authorities, and the municipality has a company who's the operator, and there are some privately owned buses which are known to be blue buses, as we call them, and we have a bus company owned by the municipality. But all these authorities are different, and there are these private operators who are trying to make profit in the system. And this includes after 1960s, actually, this includes the sea lines as well. So we have those, illegal sea taxis. Now they approach to us to get their license. So if you leave some loopholes behind you, this loophole will be filled in by someone. So actually, this is one of the handicaps of Istanbul. It's the shuttle buses. So since the public transport is not so functional, the ratio of the privately owned shuttle buses is increasing. Let me check my figures. In Istanbul, the number of passengers carried by the shuttles is the same with the minibuses. So there are 6,500 minibuses in Istanbul, and the number of passengers is that they're serving in 469 lines, and they are carrying as many passengers as the shuttle buses. So these minibuses and shuttle buses are carrying the same number of passengers, and we are making use of 3 bus companies to be able to give transportation services to that many passengers. So what's interesting is that 78% of the passengers in Istanbul are transported through rubber tire systems. So it means that there's this unorganized public transport structure. So for Istanbul passengers, I'm talking about Istanbul passengers, majority of the Istanbul passengers are transported by the informal and individual transport systems. So in order to bring this, fragmented administrative structure together, a few years ago, legal framework was drafted, but unfortunately there's a huge profit margin when it comes to transport, and there's a huge margin of profit, and unfortunately it's not a confirmed piece of information. I think these profit margins, large profit margins, are hindering the institutionalization. This is all from me, because I see some presentations in front of me, but I see the chronometer on my screen, maybe. So maybe I should cut it here. Okay, thank you very much. Maybe it's my chance to have a chronometer in front of me instead of a presentation. So I will take you to Senegal, to Dakar, to a warmer place, from Istanbul to Dakar. Why? In Dakar, they have implemented a very successful project, and they have established a transport authority called CETUD. And this transport authority has ensured a great transformation for the city of Dakar. And of course, there was a huge political will and commitment. So I will refer to my own humble experience from 13 years ago. I have worked in Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality from 2007 until 2014. We had prepared a project for the mayor to find out how we need to revise the minibus structures that are feeding for the subways, and the then mayor was so interested and he was so enthusiastic and said, okay, let's start right away. He was leaving the room and he turned and said that he didn't remember my surname, and he turned to me, you Yıldızgöz, this project is great, but I don't want to receive any complaints from the minibus drivers. I said that, okay, mayor, right away. I have understood that no, the project is not going to end up successfully. So, because there's a huge risk that should be politically faced. So, here's my question for you, Ndeye. In Dakar, how did you start? What kind of transportation authority have you established? How did you assume this risk? What are the outcomes? Could you please share the results with us very shortly?
Thank you so much, Kaan. I'm very happy to share our experience and our knowledge about informal transportation. Maybe I will start by explaining where is Dakar, because I'm not sure that everyone here knows where is it. So Dakar is the capital of Senegal. Senegal is a country in West Africa, so it's a small country. We are only 40 million people. And 3.1 million people are living in Dakar. So there is 50% of the citizens of Senegal who are living in Dakar. We have a population who is growing very fastly, like in Istanbul or in Turkey. We were 2.1 million in 2005. Currently, we are 3.1 million, and we are expecting 5 million within 2030. So we have a huge growth of the population. Also, it is a capital that concentrates every activities of Senegal, industrial, administrative, etc., because there was not a very interesting deconcentrated policy in Senegal. So unfortunately, if you work on specific situations, you are in obligation to live in Dakar, because it's very hard to move outside of the country. Maybe what can I explain about informal transportation? So CETUD, who is a public transport authority, was created in 1997. So why did we were created in 1997? Because there was no public transport organized offer, because we had a company that was called Sotrac, and Sotrac had very huge financial difficulties, and Sotrac finally couldn't continue his activities in 1995. So we had only informal transport offer, and the government decided at this period to create CETUD in 1997 in order to reorganize all the informal sector. So when we started in 1997, beginning, we had huge problem because there was no offer. The informal operators could do whatever they want. There were a lot of traffic jams done by the car that was explaining Jaspal, because in Senegal we had a tradition. We had very colorful cars that were introduced in Senegal in 1970s, and these cars used to offer all the services of transportation. So when we created CETUD, the first challenge is how do we speak to these informal operators and how do we help them to reorganize themselves. So we initiated a program that is called the Renewal Fleet Program. It started in 2005, but within our creation, we had a very long process of discussion with the informal operators, because when we arrived and you have the politics, and after you have because we changed our government in 2000, we also had to find the fundings. We also had to deal with the fact that we can't change everything easily, so we made a great process of discussion that started in 2000 when we had our new president. And after that, we tried to find funds to develop this renewal program fleet. So this renewal program fleet, what is the aim is that you as an informal operator, we help you to renew your bus. We help you to renew your bus. We also help you to be recognized by the government, to have a license and an authorization to drive in Dakar. We also give you a line, we affect you a line, and we also help you to organize your staff, because before, you can have a driver who can say 10 hours or 12 hours on the buses, so it's not very secure for the users. We had a very bad quality of service, and the challenge was to discuss with these informal operators and to help them to improve their quality of service. So the program started in 2005. It was firstly funded by the World Bank. It was a pilot program where we were able to renew 400 buses. And we created interest group of economics where all informal transport operators could join them. So if you join the interest economic group, you have the authorization to have a leasing credits. So the government helps you to withdraw your car, because we pay you cash to take out this car, and after that we give you a new car. The only obligation that you have is to bring 25% of the amount of the car at the beginning, and after that we let you 5 years to refund and pay back all that you had for the money that you had to give us back. So since 2005, the program still continues, because it's the last phases is ongoing, and we arrive to renew 1,600 buses, and today we have 14 interest group economics, so it's currently working, and the offer developed by this association of informal operators represent 40% of the current transport service. So this was a very successful program for us, because it was not easy to develop this. And also, what helped us, what can I say, is that at the period in 2005 when we created this program, we had a president that said, "That's not my problem. Go on. Conflicts, that's not I won't care about the conflicts of the informal operators, because I wasn't working at CETUD at that time, but my colleagues who were there can say you that the discussions were very tough. They had very, very difficult situations. Some of them couldn't go back home because of the discussion with the operators. But now everyone is happy, because the association is renowned in Dakar, and they arrive to deserve some suburbs of Dakar region that normal buses couldn't go. So in part of that, we also have a public service, formal public service that was created by a public operator that CETUD created in 2000. in 2000 after that SOTRAC was dissolved, and these operators currently offer 10% of the service. So today what we have is 60% of the global transport offer is done by an organized transport sector who is recognized by the government, but we still have 40% of the sector who is done by the informal operators. So our challenge is how to integrate these 40%. And even if we arrive to integrate them, we also have the problem that the population is growing very fastly, and the current capacity of the bus service couldn't satisfy the needs. So we developed 2 mass transit systems. So we have an express train and also a BRT lane, and they will help to give and to deliver a new offer. But the challenge is also to discuss with the existing operators that this new lines will not change the market. It will help them to better improve the quality of service and also to reorganize their offer. So what I just can say to summarize is institutionalize the transport sector is important, because we can't continue to let informal operators do whatever they want, because the government has no visibility about the cash flow, because now what we saw is with this organization, many of the operators became rich. That is true, because they had the lines were defined by CETUD, and CETUD take care about the opportunity to create the line and also the investment to develop the infrastructure for the line. So finally, the informal operator who join the program will, whenever what it can be, he will gain money. That's sure. And it took time for them to understand it, but finally, when they understood it, they know that it's a better way, and they continue to follow the program. And our aim is to continue to develop this for the next year. So I think that we have many similarities between Turkish cities and Dakar cities also, because we have the same challenges, we have the same discussion. What is important is to share the knowledge, and also to know that transport authority is a way to organize very surely the transport sector. And last point that I just want to add, in Dakar, the transport is not decentralized. It's government, state competence. And the municipalities are in CETUD, because we have a board where you have the state ministries, and also you have the municipalities. We have 4 main municipalities who are members of CETUD, and it is a collaboration that is working since 1997, and it gave nice results for Dakar City. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler Ndeye.
Thank you very much, Ndeye. Let's make a last round of questions, but we don't have much time, so I would like to give 2 minutes to our panelists to answer the question so that we can conclude on time. So I have this question in my mind. There is a rapid transformation in Dakar. So a city can do this only by itself. So how can the political will support this? And I have this question to Mr. Mayor of Bursa as well, and the Bursa experience. Can we relate this to the experience in Bursa as well? So 2 questions in one. Thank you. Dakar is a city of 20 million, I guess, so equal to Istanbul. So I have said this before as well. If your population is high, transport is an issue. So in the short run, of course, the political will is important. In the short run, we cannot come up with a perfect formula, because the profitability is high in transport. The sale of a vehicle, of a plate, those are huge numbers. That's why at the local level, at the province level, metropolitan municipality levels, we should get together with different cities, as stated by Kayseri. How many passengers, how are they carried? Without data, we cannot discuss anything. We need data. So, I think metropolitan municipalities should play an important role. But at municipalities, there are some prejudices about the others. And the others have prejudices about the municipality because those informal transport operators think that they won't be able to make any money. So first of all, we should clarify this. We should be able to see the whole picture at the local level. If you can come up with positive examples, that would be great. And when I was the district mayor, there were 6 cooperatives, and those 6 cooperatives, it took 1.5 years to bring them together. We established a company, and different people with different cultural backgrounds got together, but there were no standards. So we talked and talked for 1.5 years. And after 1.5 years, my daughter, aged 4.5, was going to the kindergarten with a police officer, But now we have a great system, and whenever they see me, they thank me. And they're glad that we have done this because they're included in the system in Bursa province of Turkey. So, I think at the municipalities, exerting an effort is important, and cooperation between the central government and municipalities, well, you cannot get that support easily. And in our country, everything is shaped together with elections. In Europe, there is a council, a city council. But in our case, if there are 4 elections, well, I've been through 4 elections, if there are upcoming elections, there is the pressure of the political party. So they want to postpone things, they don't want to change things, and then you cannot go on. So we have been through like 18 elections in the last 18 years. Each and every year there is an election in Turkey. So at the city level, we need to exert more efforts, then we can get concrete results. Thank you very much. So we don't have upcoming elections for the next 3.5 years, so we're lucky. Yes, we can talk about this separately with mayors. After the elections, they need to come up with new projects, so it is the right timing. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So he gave a great answer, and he brought together 2 questions as well. This issue of profitability or income, unearned income. So, are we creating this unearned income together with the system we have created? There is the new legislation, new directive of the EU. The EU says for bus operators, first there should be a tender, a competitive tender, and the maximum contract duration is for 10 years. After 10 years, another tender should be held. So, how about this unearned income? Can you please talk about Kayseri? Well, yes, this is the most important part. In Turkey, when we talk about the root reasons of this problem, we see the unearned income. 40, 50, 60 years of past. Well, in 1984, according to the decision of the Council of Ministers, there is a transition from buses to minibuses. So if you do not have a solution to this, then we cannot talk about quality standards in public transport. Because as the mayors say, everybody is concerned about the future. Okay, institutionalization is important, we should do it, but how about the concessions that are already given? In Istanbul, there is a model, there are companies, but there is not a structure of 100% institutionalized. So, in the system, if you would like to correct the system, then the business model is based on the net cost. If there are concessions, then the income from passengers is there. If we don't change this, we cannot become institutionalized. For Kayseri, we have conducted similar cities, but the root reason is this: the rent, the unearned income. And if there is inflation, you cannot talk about a service where there is no price increase. Without price increase, then people say oil prices have increased, so you need to change the model. You have also stated, if you make a contract of 10 years, you know that at the end of 10 years there will be negotiations. But 10 years is a long time. Then there's informal transport operators come with different arguments. But if the model changes, if it is not based only on the cost, then you can manage the system in a better way. And without political will, of course, we cannot become successful. In Kayseri, based on the kilometers, mileage, we implement a program, and then I can improve this system. And let me summarize. So, what are the advantages of this new model? In 2.5 years, I could improve 4.6 million passengers. And they say I have taken the concession because the number of passengers is this together with this line. But when you look at the whole system, if there is no efficiency with a certain line, then you need to again change the model. And we could do this in Kayseri. When we improve the model, we can talk about better services. 5 million kilometers of improvement. So there should be the political will, there should be amendments with the legislation, and I'm sorry to say this, but in the upcoming period we need to see more efforts. So concessions of 40-50 years shouldn't be possible. When we talk with municipalities, they don't understand me, you know. I have problems because of all those rights, concessions given 30-40 years ago. If there is a new tender, I wouldn't have these problems right now. So the root reason of this is the model based on net income. First, we need to change this model. Thank you, Mr. Feyzullah. In the world, we see this approach as well. Less regulation of quantity and more regulation on quality. In Istanbul, there is a certain number of schools, and the state says no matter what the population is, I won't increase the number of schools, and those schools will be owned by people, managed by those people. Imagine such a scenario, then I can become really powerful as the owner of the school. This is also true for the transport industry. By the way, this is not the case in Turkey, it was just an example. And I would like to talk about another parameter. Institutionalization of the informal transport is really important for taxis as well. So, Mr. Orhan, I would like to ask your opinion in terms of the reform of taxi system in Turkey. What can be done? Mostly we talked about buses.
Diyorum aslında buradaki temel sorun şu.
Actually, the basic problem is that how this profit should be shared. In some places, it is shared based on the number of passengers or according to the kilometers. So if you share this profit based on the number of passengers, by the way, I'm using mass transport heavily. So if you get on a bus in Beşiktaş, you cannot go to Ortaköy because you need to wait for 10 minutes for the ferry so that you would be able to have many passengers. Or for the longer itineraries, they just travel across the itinerary. So we need to calculate what's the fixed cost of the bus, what is the profit per kilometer or per traveler. So if this profit would be shared equally and equitably, I think many of the problems can be sorted out. When it comes to the taxis, so of course it is not that much different from the other modes, but as Mr. Feyzullah has explained earlier on, let me say it very explicitly, indefinite rights have been given and the public rights have been sold to them indefinitely, and there are several ways to do it. You should either increase the supply, you should increase the number of plates to be owned by the taxi, so that actually mass transport is the job of the public sector. I wish our local administrations would be stronger so that they would own that many licenses, so that they would be able to operate from one single operation authority. And when you look at the advanced countries, developed countries, they're all managed by the same authority. So some intercity trains come inside the city. For example, in Germany, intercity trains come to some of the inner city stations to leave some of the travelers. So I think for taxis, if the public transport is not so functional, then people want to use taxis. So if we have the rail system of 233 kilometers and we have this rail system under construction of 240 kilometers. So if your mass transport would be improved, the demand for taxis would be less. Let me add something else. We solved the transportation problem in Istanbul, but please ask yourself how you have come to this venue. Unfortunately, in Istanbul, usage of private cars can spend less time than the public transport. I think that's the main reason of the problem. So we need to control somehow the cars, private cars. Just imagine your itinerary. How much time do you need if you would use your car, and how much time would you need if you would use public transport? The shorter the better, of course. That's the main thing about the problem. So we need to make use of the land properly. We need to abide by the plans accordingly. And because if you use the airports or bridges, etc., you're increasing the number of demands for the usage of the facilities. The chronometer is not running against me, I hope. So, okay, let me cut it here. Thank you very much, Mr. Orhan. Of course, speaking of taxis, with the privilege of being a moderator, I would like to promote my book. The Taxis in the Digitalization Era is the title of my book. From A to Z, all the examples have been looked at. And the organizers of this event have published this book. So what kind of reforms can take place in the countries like Turkey? So this was the question that I've tried to ask. I would like to ask my last question to Ndeye. So a critical thing was discussed by the speakers, as the mayor has said, as the other panelists have said. So how can we convince the privately owned entrepreneurs so that they would be able to abide by this program? How have you achieved, how did you convince them in Dakar so that once we receive your answer, we can close the session?
Yes, how we arrive to convince them, that's a, that's a very difficult question because we had the discussions, the session of discussions as I told you, but in Dakar we also have the chance to have a low motorization rate. Most of the moves in Dakar are done by public transportation, so 80% of the motorized trips are done by public transportation. So for an investor, it is interesting to invest in public transportation. The question is, for them, is it good to be organized? So that means that you have to be transparent to the government, you have to follow the rules, you have to respect the line, you have to respect the stops. Is it interesting for them to be in an organized system than in an informal system? So what we learned in this program is we arrived to convince them to join this program, but it is we didn't arrive to convince them to be fully transparent with us. That's one of the regrets that we have. Is currently, if we want to have the amount of money gained by the transporter at the end of the day, you will have a part of them that will give you the information, but you will have also another part who will tell you that, we don't want to tell you what is it, etc. So the next step for CETUD is that with the development of ITS system, they will be in obligation to give true information about the cash flows and also about their organization. And it is really important for the Public Transport Authority to have this vision, because if you don't know what is currently operating in your system, it is difficult to better plan the transport sector for the future, because as I was telling you, we have the mass transit systems that is arriving, and now I think that the operators know that they must be transparent to be defended by the government within these mass transit operators who come with a new technology. So it is quite different for us, and this is unique in Senegal. So what I will say is it is interesting to invest in public transport sector in Senegal because we have an important number of users that depends on this system. So you will never lose money if you invest there. But also you need to be transparent and to give the right information to the government so that we will be able, if the system change, to help you to go on a better system and also to improve your capacity and building capacity, etc. That's what I can answer on this question.
Çok teşekkür ederim Ndeye.
Thank you very much. So, of course, it is very important to establish a proper dialogue with your interlocutor in such a way to ensure a participatory approach. So we've started our panel with a 15 minutes delay, so I want to make use of our entire time. So we have 13 more minutes. From that perspective, maybe we might be keeping you in the hall for a longer time, but please trust me, I will finish it on time. Years ago, I was told to leave the room before the audience leaves the room. That's what I was told. So how should we ask the questions? We have the protocol to respect for asking the questions. I think you need to use a mobile application to ask your questions, and I can see the questions when you ask them. I've seen the hands, raised hands, so if there are some mobile questions asked through the app, I will refer to them. If we would have time, we will receive your questions from the audience. By the way, on my app, I don't see any questions of yours. Have you sent any questions? Somebody says, I think yes, probably, because the moderator says that I haven't received your question. What was that? The English version? Oh, is it so? Could you just show it to me? please tell us the name of the person that you want to ask your question to. I can have them if it's going to take a while. Okay, I can get. Oh my God. It was such a long list of questions, so we are going to stay in this room until the evening, as it seems. So let us answer the first questions, and then we might ask you to kindly ask the rest of your questions in the afternoon session. The first question goes to the mayor. He has touched upon a very important project, a very nice subject. So shall we have an integrated planning for the mass transportation, and shall the public profit be prioritized? It was a very relevant question. And President Tahir, the head of the union, has talked about some city planning subjects. I think we have some city planners amongst us. So transport and traffic cannot be conceived by themselves. So there are several parameters. So unless you plan them properly, you'll be encountering these problems. So it's an inevitable reality. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The second question is now on the screen. Actually, there are so many questions for everyone. I'm just trying to choose one question for one person. There's one question for you, Ndeye. Within the framework of your reform activities, have you provided any subsidies or any subsidies to them? If you have, what was the source of your fund?
Yes, there were some subsidies. It was only the cash that we were giving to withdraw your car. It is a premium, sorry, I don't remember the term in English because we are a Francophone country, so in prima la casse, if we can say it in French. So this is the only subsidies that the Senegalese government gives to the operator, but we also have some facilities when the car enters in Senegal. We help you with the taxes, some fiscal taxes as lower rated, so that the car become cheaper than the initial price. And after that, all these funds come from the World Bank for the pilot program. But after the pilot program in 2005, we created a fund, a specific fund for this, and the specific fund was held by the government and the local banks. So local banks could pay the loan on behalf of the operators, and after that, the operators refund the amount of money that in the 5 years that we signed with them.
Microphone is off. Could you please warn the moderator to turn his microphone on? Of course, that's what we consider, but we don't have money to do that. Actually, speaking of incentives or subsidies, so we can offer infrastructure. Speaking of cycleways, we just allocate a blue lane for bicycles. So we might consider that, okay, it's the end of the job, and we have constructed this cycle lane, but you have to do the planning properly. So there are some zones of 30 kilometers, and you cannot pass the speed limit, and the pedestrians and the vehicles and the bicycles can coexist together. If there would be a congestion, you might spare a lane for joint usage. If there would be lots of congestion, you can limit the entry of the cars. So these are some of the options. So you need to make this gradual planning. Of course, for bicycles, of course, you need to allocate some infrastructures. You need to have some bicycle cars, some pumps, etc. So these have to be planned separately. If you do this, you wouldn't be in need of offering some cash subsidy. I think people would be voluntarily using bicycles if you would offer them necessary infrastructures. A question goes to Kayseri Transport Company. What were the obstacles that you have encountered while you were offering new itineraries, and how have you overcome them in such a way to make them opportunities instead of threats? So speaking of railways, during the construction, you receive a reaction from the citizens during construction. As Mayor Orhan said, that you might receive some reactions from the buses which have parallel itineraries with your rail line, so they are concerned about their profits, as you might imagine. In our model, so we have saved the operator by 70 to 80%, so we don't think that we would have some reactions, because we make the payments by kilometers, and we have the chance to operate those itineraries, those lines, in such a way to feed the main lines, and there's not that many concerns at the level of users. And some transit models, some models have been reacted against. For example, we have made the transfers free of charge as of May. This was impossible to consider in the past, but today the operators don't create this as a problem. So we have proceeded with a transfer model. So what were our attainments? 1.5 kilometers of savings was my achievement. So while offering some free of charge transfers, what we've configured in our mind is to improve the system to advance. So that was one of the things that we've done. So that kind of reactions are getting less and less in number, because we have a chance to plan things differently, and we have minimized the number of reactions from the side of operators. Thank you very much, Mr. Feyzullah. Actually, we have answered many of the questions during their speeches. I'm not going to show them on your screen, so just for your information. Last question goes to Jaspal. So what do you think would be the effect of institutionalization of the private operators? What would be their effect on the climate change and the emission reduction, etc., if they would get institutionalized?
Thank you. I think this is a very relevant question in current scenario when we have this climate change strike going on around the world. One effect is that with the, like what we learned from Dakar, they help to vehicle renewal, you know. So when you do the vehicle renewal, one thing you can do is you can have a better quality, better fuel standard vehicle. You can like if you go to some of these developing cities, the kind of, in Philippines, they are using these jeepneys. These are quite old diesel-based jeepneys, and they now trying to switch it to the electric one. So if they manage to do it, because yesterday there was a strike, so it's still challenging, it's not easy. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to convert those diesel vehicle into electric, and if they manage to do it, it's still very good for the city and the society. So I think with the institutionalization, you not only reform the sector for the customer and give a good service, but you can also make it as a change for the whole city. Like in Dubai, you know, when they replace those vehicles with good quality cars, and now they're going towards electric and hybrid. So it's a kind of a change which is good for climate, good for cities branding, good for tourism. It can definitely help, you know, to address that climate change, because the vehicle renewal can only be done when you implement these kind of reforms.
Çok teşekkürler Jaspal.
Thank you, Jaspal. We have 3 minutes left. One more question from our audience. So, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Haluk, Professor Haluk, because I saw your hand. The last question, please. We have more questions. but we have to break for lunch. Maybe during the lunch you can get a chance to ask. Thank you, Kaan. My name is Haluk Gerçek from Istanbul Technical University, a consultant in transport. I'm retired right now. I have a question for all speakers. We have listened to many important ideas about informal transport. We see chaos, and there are some people who achieve unearned income because of this chaos. The most important problem here is to regulate, institutionalize this informal sector. How can we implement a system for the benefit of the society? Let me share my personal view and then I will ask my question as Mr. Orhan suggested. In my view, public transport is a service, a public service. That's why there shouldn't be any profit-making objectives, and the cost should be supported by the central government, because the public is the important part here. So reasonable price, secure, comfortable public transport should be offered. So this is a duty, this is a responsibility. So the most important problem of the informal sector, everybody complains about the unearned income, but if the political will doesn't change anything, if the political will is not there to come up with a proper system, and this is the situation in Turkey because the politicians also get from that unearned income, and then you cannot solve the problem. In different panels you can discuss this, but afterwards you cannot change anything. So what should the political will do so that the chaos can end up? How can a healthy system be established? What should the political will do? What are your opinions? This is a question for you. Who wants to take the floor? We can start with you. And I would like to explain the position of UITP with a single sentence at the very end. I'm sorry, but the public sector cannot be held responsible for everything because the private sector is strong. I think you cannot leave everything to the public sector. The public sector should control everything, but I cannot say the ratio. It depends on the city. The private sector should be included as well. The political will can do the politicians get from this unearned income? I don't know. There are 30 metropolitan municipalities in Turkey, so many small municipalities. So each and every district, province has a different reality. How can you solve this problem? This is a problem of many, many years. There is a long history. So you cannot solve this problem overnight. It is not possible. Because many years ago some rights were given. So what are you going to do with them? You need a reform, but it takes time. And in transport you have experience, you have lectured at the university. In my opinion, I think both sides should understand one another, but nobody listens to the other. The municipalities say they are informal, so there's nothing to talk, and the informal transport says this is the municipality, they will exploit us, they will get taxes from our shoulders, so we won't be able to make any money. So that is the understanding. That's why we cannot come up with a solution. The public sector should focus on this question. I do agree, but we need to first persuade the other side. When I was a mayor of the district, I did the same thing. We are after high quality, feasible service, transport service. If we can offer this, then more people will go for the public transport and the system will be more profitable. If you go informal, you cannot survive. You do not give any trust to people. And Mr. Feyzullah also told us, you don't know about the driver, there are no skills, you don't know how many disabled are there, and then people do not feel safe. So, on the public sector, you know the capacity, you cannot give a proper answer, and then as Mr. Orhan suggested, if we do not boost the culture of public transport, we cannot go on. In Europe, the usage of public transport is way higher, but in Turkey, everybody goes for private car. Why? Because there is no belief in public transport, and there are quality-related issues. That's why we need a dialogue. Both parties need to understand one another to solve the issue. Very briefly, I do agree with Mr. Haluk, more than 100% maybe. We need the public sector as the leader. Well, we are talking about the rent on unearned income, but the marginal groups have a political power as well. So, in my opinion, if there is no such a relationship, we can solve the problem. So, I had a brief experience, but those groups were having the business cards of different political parties, you know. So first, these relationships based on interests should be stopped. That is the first thing to do. We took a brave step. In Princess Islands of Istanbul, there is a similar situation. We are trying to solve the problem of horse carriage there, and that's the small part of the informal transport. If we can achieve this, this will be a model, then it will be implemented in Istanbul, and I hope that initiative will be successful. Thank you. This is a very important subject, and I would like to talk about the UITP as well, because it represents many different actors. At UITP, we think the public transport is seen as a public service, but this doesn't mean that the public sector will be responsible for everything. The vision, the political perspective is coming from the public sector, so it shouldn't be commercialized. Why? Because there are the disadvantaged groups, there is the environmental impact, there is the social impact, so the vision should be this. But of course the public sector can collaborate with the private sector. Let me give you two examples. The most efficient bus operators are in Hong Kong, in my view, in terms of cost, in terms of efficiency. In Hong Kong, it is deregulated. The public sector doesn't do anything, but it is very efficient. And taxi operators, the most efficient ones are in Singapore. For 1 kilometer, you pay less in Singapore. Singapore is way more expensive than Istanbul. Their national income is 6 times bigger than Turkey, but the taxi is deregulated in Singapore. So the role of the public sector, how should we design this? This is really important. We can make use of the capacities of the private sector. That's how we think at UITP. Mr. Feyzullah, would you like to add on something? As Mr. Haluk suggested, we cannot solve this problem overnight, but we need a strategic plan for the future, and we need to take the actions today. So today in Turkey about public transport, there is no legislation, there is no unit at the central government level, so municipalities are the only actors to solve this problem right now. That's why we need the support of the political will, and in terms of legislation, we need clarification in Turkey. Qatar, for example, it took 20 years. They couldn't solve overnight. Dakar, sorry, Qatar. Correction of the speaker, Dakar. You cannot solve the issue overnight, but in 20 years, yes, you can solve. Okay, let's go and try to solve this problem. Thank you.